the safer use of anabolic steroids. This is really the first booklet for a harm reduction perspective with Dr. Timothy Piatkowski, my dear friend in Australia. Welcome, Tim. You put this together. Tell us everything about this. What were you thinking? We're going to walk everyone through this. I'm Dr. Thomas O'Connor, a lifelong powerlifter, board-certified physician, and published academic author. I've taken care of thousands of men on testosterone and steroids, and now I use my media appearances in this YouTube channel to provide education and harm reduction. Subscribe now so I can help you stay strong and healthy.
There's a lot of people in Australia, but also around the world, who want to use steroids and other PEDs, or have an intention to use, and they've got to go through so many sources of information and talk to so many people. And I thought we needed a space where it was all brought together.
So, and tell us a little bit about yourself, or a lot about yourself.
Was a long time gym goer, long time lifter, used steroids and other PEDs for a long time. So when I started researching and started looking at harm reduction and how to best support the community and do good health promotion work, you know, it all sort of came together quite easily. On top of that, obviously, I am a researcher. I'm an NHMRC investigator, emerging leadership fellow. I run programs for people who use drugs, but particularly people who use steroids, based on community-led approaches and what we can do for people who use steroids and other PEDs in this space. So one of the programs I run was the world first steroid checking trial here in Queensland in Australia, which is now a fully operational steroid testing and research implementation program that continues to run.
There's so much to cover. Let's get right into this. I want to start off, when you look at this, of course, everyone, you'll be able to go in the description and get the link yourself and really go through this booklet with us. But let's go through the booklet with Dr. Piatkowski himself. So starting off on table 1, look at this. We have the anabolic steroid classes of the world. Bring us through this table and how you opened up with this itself.
I think, you know, if you're going to have a go at using anabolic steroids, you want to know what your options are, right? And so how do you, I guess, really clearly and easily synthesize for someone what the options are? I mean, in the literature, as you know, we got 32 different classes represented, not even mentioning the hundreds of, you know, different designer options that are flying around the market at the moment. So I thought, what are the key classes? What are the key modes of administration that we want to get across to people? And so I think that's where this table came together. And then I threw in the right-hand corner as well, you know, some of the other off-label medicines and subcutaneous options, you know, insulin, human growth. And Tom, as you know, a lot of these on-label medicines, right? These have clinical uses. Right. It's just that our community uses these off-label, right? At slightly varying doses.
Next is going to be the half-life, and there's so much. Everyone learns in the bro science about the half-life of the regimens. You know, the orals are short. You start them off to kickstart a cycle back in the old day, even today. Certainly with anadrol and dianabol, and they're effective, but they're potentially very toxic. And then you get into understanding the short-acting, say like primobolan, right? Masteron, short-acting. So propionate versus undecanate, which is like, that's really the scale, right? The short-acting half-life of 2 or 3 days versus like 3 weeks, you know, for testosterone undecanate injections. And then, of course, we have the moderate esters, which is cypionate and enanthate. That's really the main currency of the world of the base and Sustanon 250. So, you know, you laid out a great job here about the half-life and the pharmacokinetics, and I can't read all the words here, but it's just amazing that you're breaking it down and you're showing us those half-lives. Tim, tell me, what were you thinking about this when you talked about the implications of the half-life on use patterns?
Yeah, I think, as you say, you know, you want to know when you're planning your usage strategy, whether that's, you know, to go on a cycle of X amount of weeks, whether, you know, you're going to cruise for longer. You want to know, you know, how often you're injecting and why you're doing that. Why would you be, you know, injecting every day versus every other day versus once a week? And I think a little bit of that knowledge goes a long way. I think what I wanted to get across as well when I went into the implications was, you know, for example, we have various studies and we've got a corpus of literature there that speaks to what has happened clinically when we've injected these drugs into, you know, hypergonadal men. And frankly, yeah, the half-life varies, but it's good to have a blueprint. Wanted to touch on that subcutaneous injection delivery that we've been looking at lately, and pros and cons here, right? Like the issue for me being that if you were using an unregulated testosterone that's been cooked up in someone's bathtub, that's very, very different to subcutaneously injecting a regulated product. You know, this isn't BAppSci. This is made in a toilet, mixed around with a spoon and coffee filters. So if you're experimenting with a drug and you know that drug is known for its psychosocial effects or any other undesirable effects, short-est is great. I mean, it's in and out quick. You can pull the pin if things start going pear-shaped. I mean, some of my research has shown at any more than 200 milligrams of trenbolone, the significance of those psychosocial effects starts to come into play. So keeping that dose low, keeping the cycles below or the usage below 4 weeks. And I think, acetate lends itself to, ejecting yourself from that situation quickly, as opposed to something like Tren-Hex or Tren-E. So wanted to capture some of that for people as well, I think.
What else do we have here? I mean, I'm looking at table 3 and the aromatization, the 5-alpha reduction, right? So you got estrogen, you have the DHT, 17-alpha alkylation, hepatotoxic. Let's go into that. This is just, I can just go crazy on this.
So I think you're well placed to speak to this, Tom, but I think maybe a bit much for some of the very, very early, people early on in their journey. But I think you got to have an understanding of how these drugs are metabolized and the conversions that are occurring. If you're combining multiple drugs that aromatize, then you're exposing yourself to increased risk of, for example, gynecomastia, increased risk of those estrogen-related side effects, and then you're tipping more drugs in to manage. Suddenly, I'm sure people do this to you all the time. I need some tamoxifen. I need some exemestane. I need some anastrozole. Help me, help me, help me. And I think that can be avoided if we know how these drugs are being used and planning what the strategy is.
Let's keep moving through. This is unbelievable. The next piece is ready for your cycle, for your first cycle design, post-cycle therapy. We have Vigorous Steve, right? I was a huge influencer, a very bright man. Go into this to tell us a little bit about this.
I think when you're planning that first one, it is a personal choice. We've got the cookie cut, 1 mil of testosterone and anthate for 12 weeks, come off, have a 4-week, PCT program, and then call it a day. But I think you and I both know, Tom, that that's not how this rolls out. That's not how it happens. It's, I'm going to start using, suddenly after, 6-8 weeks, I'm going to up it to 2 mil of testosterone. After maybe another, 4 weeks, I'm going to up it again. I'm going to go 750. I'm going to go one gram. And then the PCT never happens, and there's just this wild, unplanned, usage, and it goes on for years, and that's where the problems happen. I think when you sit down at the start and you start playing in this area, it's I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it the right way the first time. Here's some thoughts and ideas about it. Here's some of Steve's videos to try and contextualize it and make it I guess easier than writing out the cycle options. But I think all that stuff is out there, and not just in internet forums. There are scholarly papers that present supraclinical doses of testosterone C and E that you can find that are anywhere between 125 to 500 milligrams usage for, up to, I think, 24 weeks. And the results aren't terrible, right?
And I always say this, you do one cycle. Yeah, old-fashioned day, 6 weeks. No one ever did it for 6 weeks, because after 6 weeks, you're just starting to feel good. So 12 weeks, like you have here, right? And you understand how long you can do it, 12 to 16 weeks. I'm looking at your cycle design, which is right out of the streets, guys, right out of the true streets. And that's good. That's anecdotal for decades. That's good. Now, can you guarantee a young man that you stop your cycle and you take, this is where we need research, and that's why you and I are coming together. Research on these post-cycle, the effectiveness of PCT with SERMs, tamoxifen, Novadex, the clomiphene, starting HCG, right? We know that human chorionic gonadotropin is going to be so valuable to offset these vector forces against the testicle and your hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis. But this stuff's been going on for decades, and I think it's just absolutely poor. It's just inhuman that we've never really put resources into looking into this for doing proper studies. That's why we're here. Right, Tim? Don't you agree with that?
Agreed.
And guys, we're going to do it. So let's keep moving through here. Safer injecting. Oh, my Lord. Look at this. I mean, common injection sites, the glute, the thighs, the shoulders, the lats, funny enough, the traps, right? And syringes, needle, alcohol swabs. Sure.
I guess part of having this here is that we know that, and even in some of the research that we're doing, upwards of 90% of the sample is injecting. And at least 70%, we know from international estimates of people who use steroids are injecting. This is the primary route of administration, and some would argue the safer route
because
of administration.
It is safer. Yes.
When done correctly, aligns with clinical models of testosterone delivery, as opposed to absolutely bashing your liver into palliatosis or cholestasis. So I think, there's something to be said about making sure that people are doing this right, and giving them the tools. So I think that was the intention here, and to step people through as much as possible.
Let's keep going. So it breaks down intermuscular versus subcutaneous. Very, very interesting. And now here we have, of course, the health precautions. So I'm going to cruise through this. We have a lot, bloodborne transmission. Steroid users don't share needles. That was blown out of proportion. It can be true. I just think the numbers, I think the average steroid user knows not to share the needle. But again, it can happen. Next thing is health monitoring, right? So this is the stuff that's really my side of it. And, understanding the PEDs, understanding the doses, understanding where to go. How do you see this, the health monitoring coming out in your world, where they could come free, they could look at labs, have doctors and nurses. I want testosteronology. It's got to come over and take that predominant stand of the standard of care, because it's internal medicine basis, and then it's on steroids or testosterone. What do you think?
We have, number one, under-resourced and undertrained public health workforce. We have, programs that aren't attuned to the needs of people who use steroids, and we have a incredibly punitive, particularly where I am in Queensland, very punitive response to steroids, in that they are a Schedule 1 drug aligned with heroin and methamphetamine, up to 25 years in prison. I know parts of the US have similar drug laws. And so in that mix is this, hesitation of doctors to prescribe and to monitor, even to have the discussion. And so the general, I guess, messaging is don't do it or stop. And as you said before, and as we know, you don't just stop using androgens. It's depression, mood disorders, suicidal ideation, and then we've lost a life. And you can't put a price on that. You can't put a price on what a life is worth or make a economic argument. And certainly people who use steroids or any sort of androgen shouldn't be backed into a corner or feel like they can't have a discussion with a healthcare provider or with someone about their use because they're scared or because they're being stigmatized. And, if you're lucky, you might have a general practitioner who will supervise you, but certainly if you're getting a script, that's probably worth its weight in gold. And it's not, this isn't really happening. And so booming unregulated market and booming drug coaching, bro science, and not saying, and some of that knowledge is fantastic. Let's be honest. I mean, that's where I shaped some of my, knowledge and always have, open discussions around what we see in, I guess, clinical literature and what we see when we actually play this out, in vivo, n equals 1, or, experimental type plays. I guess for me, we need to align our approaches with what is currently best practice. And I guess currently what I see as best practice is what you're doing, Tom.
The cardiac, the kidney and the liver, those are my babies because that's internal medicine. That stuff takes a long time to go down. It's not easy to take those things down when you're young. But you have to understand there's a cumulative effect. Because I started steroids when I was 23. I went on and off for a couple of years. By the time I was 27 or 28, I've been on the whole time. This is your booklet, and you're going to move through it. And we want to get comments, right? We want to get a lot of people to spread this around. Let's keep moving through. Unbelievable. The blood work interpretation. I mean, how often should you get it done? At least twice a year. I agree with that. You should have a testosteronologist. Those are going to be my healthcare providers that are trained under me. We're working around the clock. They're healthcare providers, mostly from primary care, right? They're not surgeons. I mean, they're primary care internists. They're nurse practitioners. We have psychiatrists. We have nurse practitioners in the psychiatric field. They're understanding the aspects I'm teaching them, and we're really expanding across the globe. If you're a healthcare provider, please contact us to be a provider and see if you can come into our training program. And I'd love to help. We're opening up on all across the lands, all over the world. Let's keep going, guys. So the full blood count, the liver and kidneys, you did a great job. The explanation here, this is my stuff right here. The estimated GFR, I've seen hundreds of guys go into kidney disease. I want to cry. Going into kidney disease. And then when you have kidney disease and you're young, not to mention it's not good when you're old, you're cachectic. You're going to go to dialysis. You're going to get how many people? Tim, it's preventable. It is 100% preventable, but it doesn't mean you could take tons of drugs. And you guys know I have a problem with a line in the sand for how many drugs you could take. So if we keep moving through, we have, of course, the sex hormones, the thyroid, blood pressure, testosterone effects. What does the illegal steroid market look like in Australia? Tim, please.
Around the world, over the last decade, there has been a 750% increase in the weight of steroids seized. In Australia, during that same time, we've gone up 1,400%. And so almost double. And everyone on the internet, tren, you know, bit of NPP, bit of test, bit of growth, give me some insulin, and we can order it to our doorstep. But some of those drugs, some of those compounds are full of, you know, for example, flesh-eating bacteria. If it's a water-based injectable like stanozolol, they're full of, you know, other excipients that we don't know. And to be honest, these aren't regulated products. So it's not Kmart or, you know, it's not Walgreens or whatever else. Like, there's no receipt. This is, you know, this is the dice that you're rolling. And over 70% of products underdosed. So that's what we're playing with. How are you meant to make a decision about your usage strategy if it's either A, the wrong drug, which happens about a quarter of the time in our steroid checking trial last year, and B, if it's underdosed or overdosed, you know, but that happens a lot less. So I think we're playing in a space where, you know, there's all these different variables, and people need to see the data, as you'd say,
right,
and know that this is what's happening, and that what is on the bottle is not necessarily what you're putting in your body.
Let's talk about the women's section. I want to make sure we bring attention to the women on steroids.
It was important to have some representation there, and if you think we don't have, you know, evidence-based data for men, take that and cut it in, you know, in a tenth or less, you know, in a thousandth for women in this space. And I guess I think this is a section, and love that we've been able to represent, but I think women need a specific booklet as well down the line, and need some specific resourcing. And so, you know, women are using these drugs more. I mean, my systematic review from last year shows that 4% of women around the world are using anabolic steroids compared to 6.4% of men. We know that this is on the rise, and we really need to be doing more active engagement and health promotion in this space.
So, and let's close with this, Tim. Please tell us, at least in Australia, where people can get help, because I saw a lot of that in the booklet.
We have Steroid Connect, which is a program run by Griffith, the Queensland Injectors Voice for Advocacy and Action. And it's a sub-program of Peer Connect. It's essentially a phone line, confidential. Call the number, 1-800-175-889, free call. Press number 2 for steroids, and you will get on the line with Sonia, or she'll give you a call back. Everything's confidential. You can discuss, say for injecting, you can discuss steroid testing results. You can talk about what your usage strategy is. You can talk about psychosocially what's going on. Is there a relationship breakdown? Is it time to stop using a gram of tren a week, maybe? You know, any of those types of things, and that relational care is embedded. And you know, that is available to, you know, it's a Queensland program, but we don't care where you're from. If you're part of our community, we want to help you.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's a long video, guys, but again, we had to cover the whole thing, and I want so many people to just share this with everyone. Doctor, thank you so much, and this is just the beginning. Thank you so much for working together with me and presenting this amazing steroid booklet.
Thanks, Dr. O'Connor.
Thank you.